Hey, what's up? It's Goffy here, and in today's overdue video, we're going to be taking a look at this. This is the Voigtlander 28mm f2 Ultron. For those of you that have been here for a little while, you'll know that I bought this lens to go along with my 50mm Nokton lens. This gave me a two lens setup that covered pretty much all bases, and I've been enjoying using these two lenses since, and I've already done a review on the 50mm, so it's about time I did a review on the 28mm. Let's quickly breeze through some specs. So from a glass point of view, we're looking at 10 elements in 8 groups. So although this lens is tiny in size, there's an awful lot going on inside it. The body of the lens is made out of a black anodized aluminium, and the focusing helicoid on the inside looks to be made of brass. This all comes in at a very low weight of 244 grams. From an aperture perspective, this goes from f2 to f22, and it does that via 10 straight aperture blades. On the front of the lens is a 46mm filter thread for all your filter needs. Inside the box you get a lens hood, 2 lens caps, and the lens cap actually sits inside the lens hood, so it's not like some Voigtlander lenses where the lens cap goes over the hood, it sits nicely inside. All of this will set you back £539. So what's this lens like to use? I think there's 2 main selling points here. The first is its size. This is a tiny little lens, and it's not exactly slow at f2. When used on an M240 and a Leica M6, it actually balances so well. If you hang it from 2 camera straps, the camera almost sits perfectly flat. And if you put the camera down on the table, it's not falling over. I find lots of bigger lenses, when you put them down, they kind of rest lens first on the table. This doesn't do that. Both the M240 and the M6 sit up straight with this lens attached. I feel like this is the sort of lens that if you shut your eyes and think of it like a lens, this is what you expect. It's small, compact, pretty fast, and focuses really smoothly. And importantly, moving on to the second point, it has a focus tab. Now, I don't know what it is with third-party manufacturers when it comes to Leica lenses, but loads of them leave off that finger tab. The finger tab to me is so important, especially on an everyday lens like this. I feel like the only time that I agree with binning this finger tab is if it's a super fast lens, a little bit like the Nokton. If you're shooting at f1.4, f1.5, that sort of area, I get why you might need that longer focus throw and maybe a finger tab doesn't make sense, but for an everyday lens like this, finger tabs to me are a must. This guy has one. Okay, so we know this lens is well priced, well built, and handles as you'd expect. So how does it perform? At f2, this lens is lovely and sharp in the center, but towards the edges, they are quite soft and a little messy. I personally don't find this to be too much of an issue, but this is where you're gonna see the difference in spending £500 and say £3 on a Leica lens. Stop down a little though, this lens tidies up exactly like you'd expect. By the time you get into f4, f5.6, things are looking much better. I personally find that this lens really comes alive when shooting film. This lens has lived on my Leica M6 most of the time I've had it. I feel like it's when you're shooting digital that you start to notice some of these imperfections come in. Having said that though, this lens does work perfectly well on a Leica M240. There are a few Voigtlander lenses that have really weird issues when you use them on a digital body. This isn't one of them. You can tell that this lens was definitely designed with digital rangefinders in mind. In terms of purple fringing and flare control, this lens is actually really good. Even when shot wide open, I've really seen very, very little purple fringing in my images. So what are the alternatives to this lens then? Now, this is where this lens sits in a bit of a funny place. For the money, there's really not that much that compares to it, and you have to spend slightly more. So like I said earlier, this lens is about £500, but if your budget was say £800 to £1,000, I think that's where things get interesting. First up is the Zeiss Biogon. It's a 28mm f2.8 lens. It's a lens that's known for being crazy sharp. However, this does come at the cost, and that comes at the cost of one stop of light. Now, if you shoot digital, that might not be so much of a problem for you if you can lean on ISO, but personally, I spend more time shooting film than I do digital these days, so that one stop of light was important to me, and that was what stopped me going for the Zeiss lens. Now, one consideration if you're happy to go second hand is actually a Leica lens. So there's quite a few Leica Elmerits around the £1,000 mark. They're a little bit old, but you do get Leica glass and very, very good quality, but it comes back to the same point. They're f2.8 rather than f2 lenses. If price is no object and you're keen to go pure Leica, then I probably recommend you do. It's gonna outperform this lens and you're gonna get that f2. However, you're gonna have to dig deep. That lens costs £3,600. You could quite literally have 6 of these guys for that money. So I think an interesting question for a lot of people would be, why shoot 28mm anyway? I think to many people, 28mm is a bit of a funny focal length, and most people would opt for 35. But personally, I think think 28 is in a bit of a sweet spot. It's quite wide, it's wider than your 35, but you can still get away with taking nice portraits, where if you go too much wider than 28, you can't. With my 21mm, you do have to be very, very careful with portraits that people aren't too close, so that people don't look too distorted. 28mm is also about as wide as you can go on most Leica bodies, and still use the rangefinder. On both my M240 and my M6, when using the 28mm, the frame lines are right on the edge of the frame. I imagine if you wear glasses, you might actually struggle to see them, but essentially you end up using the entire rangefinder to compose your images. Now this does come at the cost of one of the benefits of using a rangefinder, where you can see outside of your frame lines that can help you compose, but personally I actually quite enjoy shooting like this, where you don't actually need to worry about the frame lines. Basically everything you're seeing is going to be in the final image. So like I said at the start of this video, I've been using this little 28mm alongside the 50mm Nokton lens, which is an f1.5 lens. So I feel like I've got pretty much everything covered here. If I want to go wide, I stick on the 28mm. If I want to get some really nice close portraits, I stick on the 50mm and have the extra bit of speed too. And I'm finding that this is a very everyday focal length, and at f2 I can use it in pretty much all situations without having to resort to the 50mm for that extra stop of light. One downside to 28mm though is that it's very, very close to most phone focal lengths, so there's an awful lot of 28mm images out there, and arguably the market's pretty oversaturated with this focal length. So overall I'm very happy with this lens. For the price, it does seem a little too good to be true, and I feel like I say that with a lot of Voigtlander lenses. From a performance point of view, there's definitely better lenses out there, but you're gonna have to either forego price or one stop of light. I find that this lens complements my 50mm very well, and for that reason, this, along with my 50mm Nokton, come with me pretty much everywhere. If you do have any questions about this lens, feel free to hit me up in the comments and I'll try and get back to you. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Cheers.